Hi, my name is Hayley Howard, and today I'm doing my informative speech on the 1953 bus boycott of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And so, um, the bus boycott of 1955 in Montgomery, Alabama was Rosa Parks, as the hero was a clone, a duplicate, an imitation. So the first African-American bus boycott actually happened in Louisiana, right here in Baton Rouge. Although history books tend to overlook this boycott, um, uh, this was the driving force behind the famous Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott led by Martin Luther King Jr. And so citizens often feel powerless against government. They feel helpless to bring about change that's in their best interests. And so this speech, I hope, can inspire and motivate citizens to join forces in combating injustice. And so it's a story that illustrates the collective power of the links of a chain. And so I'm an African American who was born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My grandparents and great-grandmother lived through the Baton Rouge bus boycott. I've had the opportunity to hear firsthand accounts from family members who actually participated. So today I'm going to share with you my knowledge of Baton Rouge, Louisiana's boycott of 1953. I'll be covering what sparked the bus boycotts, how Baton Rouge's Black community wielded their collective power, the boycott's abrupt and controversial ending, and how the bus boycott in Baton Rouge served as a template that led to the civil rights movement that brought change to America. And so, in 1950, the financially stressed Baton Rouge City Bus Company got the exclusive contract to provide busing service to Baton Rouge residents. The Baton Rouge City Council revoked the licenses of the nearly 40 Black-owned bus services operated in the city-owned bus company. But to ride in segregated buses, blacks made about 80% of the ridership, but had to sit in the back of the bus or stand in front of the seats reserved for whites that were empty. This went on for 3 years, and then in January of 1953, the City Council increased the fare from 10 to 15 cents. So Reverend T.J. Jennison, pastor of Mountain Zion Baptist Church, which is the largest Black church in Louisiana, complained to the City Council about this. In response, to the Reverend's complaint, the City Council passed Ordinance 222. The ordinance allowed Black people to sit in white seats if the bus was crowded and those seats were unoccupied. The white city bus drivers didn't want Black people sitting in their seats reserved for whites, even if there were no white passengers on the bus. So they were very angry about this. Then on the morning of June 14th of 1953, Martha White, a 23-year-old Black housekeeper, got on the bus for a ride to work, and the bus was full of standing Black passengers and no one was in the white seats in the front. They boarded the bus. The driver ordered her to get out the seat. Another Black woman sat down next to the white people in the seats and urged the other riders to stick together and remain on the bus. And so they created a protest. And then the driver threatened to have the woman arrested and summoned to police. And the city bus manager showed up, and the driver was suspended for complying with ordinance. And so this angered the drivers a lot, the bus drivers. So they eventually had a 4-day strike, and the strike ended with the Louisiana Attorney General overturning Ordinance 222, saying it violated Louisiana segregation laws. And so at this point, the African American community had lost the right to have their own buses where they could sit anywhere they liked. They were forced to use the city-owned buses for transportation, but they had to stand if Black seats were filled, even if the white seats were empty, and had to pay higher fares. So Ordinance 222 gave them the small and very short-lived reward of sitting in the white seats, and if they were empty, but now it was gone, and so now they had nothing. And so the African American wielded their collective power. And so that night, Reverend Jemison and other community leaders called a meeting to McKinley High School to boycott the buses. And so protesters stayed out all night, knocking on doors, informing the community to stay off the buses the next day. They made an announcement that night on radio: don't ride city buses until the law is changed. A carpool service will get you in the morning. And so that morning, when city buses approached, the African American community and supporters turned their backs. Instead, workers and churchgoers were picked up a few paces down from the designated bus stop and took where they needed to go. So they had their own carpool going. And so nightly meetings during the boycott drew thousands of people. They had to move the meetings to Memorial Stadium, and so many people showed up. Organizers collected thousands of dollars to support the action. Gas station owners, which is Horatio Thompson, the first Black man in the South to operate Esso service franchise, sold his gas to boycotters at good cost. And so the Baton Rouge Bus Company was now facing financial ruin with no ridership, because the African American community made up majority of their ridership. And so this made, of course, everyone angry, and Black leaders were getting death threats. And, the counsel for the boycott, Joni Jones, was trapped on railroad tracks when two of the drivers blocked him because they were so angry. But the community stated their facts. We don't have to ride their buses. There's nothing wrong with our feet. We'll keep walking. And so things were looking good. It was wonderful. Even my great-grandmother, her name was Lucille Fleming. She was from Natchez, Mississippi. She played a part. As a resident of Baton Rouge, she was a regular bus rider, but instead of standing at the bus stop, she waited in line for a ride in a personal vehicle. And as she responded, pleased to meet you, Sammy Hard. This is a funny story. My name is Lucille Fleming. And so after a moment of responding, she's, no, slam it hard. And so his name was not Sammy Hard. He was asking for her to slam the door hard. So it's a funny story. But all the things, can come to an end. Now everyone's all good. And so then, to everyone's surprise, after just 4 days of boycotting, on June 23rd, Reverend Jemison announced he had reached an agreement with the city council and the boycott was over. And so on June 24th, Ordinance 251 was passed by the city council. And the ordinance reduced the number of reserved white seats, and Black riders would have to remain standing even if seats in the whites only area were available. And so many in the Black community felt betrayed by the ordeal. And word on the street was that Reverend had betrayed his followers and the mission. And so even though the boycott ended abruptly, many Black riders gained very little. And the Baton Rouge bus boycott served as a template for civil rights efforts that would go on to change in America, hence Montgomery, Alabama. And so the boycott was a template that led to the civil rights movement that brought change to America. The New York Times declared bus boycott effective, and Black newspapers around the country spread the news that 20,000 Black riders in Baton Rouge had boldly challenged segregation practices on Louisiana buses. 2 years later, in 1955, the lessons learned in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, were put to work in Montgomery by Martin Luther King. And so today we heard about the difficulties faced by Black Americans in the 1950s in the segregated Deep South that led to discontent. You learned how Black bus riders lost the ability to ride on Black-owned buses and to sit anywhere they choose. Forced to ride on city buses driven by white drivers, Blacks had to sit in the rear of the back of the bus. And to add insult to injury, they were forced to pay greater fares. And so the injustice was just too much for Baton Rouge community to bear. And so we organized, and they helped each other to make sure that no one had to ride the city buses. They were steadfast in their mission, brought city government to their knees in a way, and even my great-grandmother took part, which is really cool. And so Reverend Jemison, the man who kind of sold out the community, suddenly caved, agreeing to a solution with very little reward to the Black riders. But despite the controversial ending, the world would later see a similar bus boycott carried out. And so the historic but little known bus boycott of Baton Rouge illustrates the collective power of African Americans working together. The Baton Rouge boycott that helped spark the civil rights movement continues to be relevant. And so given today's social discomfort, Baton Rouge bus boycott can still serve as a template, a model to challenge injustice and to bring about change. So thank you for listening today. You'll have a good one.